one block up whatever that market street that Calgary has, like after the protest was done, and there was like 6 cops on horses,
Oh,
just like standing around waiting
how big
for
were the
for
horses? Were
they were tall horses.
They were
Yeah,
big,
they
like,
were
massive
they were big
horses?
horses.
Yeah.
They were shitting everywhere all over
Yeah.
the streets. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, these guys really want blood.
I got like fucking rolled up on by 3 horses at a fucking park in Montreal
Jesus Christ.
because I opened a fucking Corona and I didn't have food out immediately, and it was a huge crowd of people too. So they were obviously scanning the crowd
Yeah.
to see, and I was like, Jesus Christ, like they
Oh
were so
my
aggressive
God.
about it too. They're like, pour it out. I'm like, fuck, man, like
They,
you and your big ass horses. Like,
they're really out of power
kidding
for
me?
this some kind
Like,
of-
yeah, during the pandemic, they were so mad. You could tell they were so mad that they didn't manage to like shut down Tam Tams.
Yeah.
The Tam Tams, like they I know they were gunning for that Montreal tradition to fucking get rid of it.
Oh boy.
That's what they like doing though.
Yeah, it was I don't know, it was interesting.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just like I think there needs to be better news commentary.
Yeah, I think we need a bit more focused news commentary.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like I like their takes most of the time.
Mhm.
They're good about
Yeah, it's also I guess it's also the problem whenever you have like someone who's doing news commentary as an individual is that it's really easy for people to get distracted.
Mhm.
Like, it's not even necessarily their fault, but like if you're literally the only person who posts anything, then like there's nobody to ever tell you like what's the best priority in any given moment.
I want to do like so on scale with like the can tab, not the tabs, but the punching.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You could punch a hole through the top and then just like have it do one and just kind of like
Yeah.
articulate it, I think. But I'm kind of worried if it's going to be too sharp. If I could hurt somebody in the pit with this and cut somebody in the pit, I don't really want to do that.
Get on the meeting? Okay, so the next thing is for us to get to the slide.
Oh, to the slideshow. Do we have the link or the link for that by chance?
Okay, again, I can look it up in my email.
Oh, sorry. That like Asian grocery store over there,
Okay, yes.
do they just have boxes blocking the main entrance all the time?
Maybe get onto.
Because I wanted to go buy something in there and I was like kind of too awkward to go in because like there's empty boxes, like
Not in my memory. That seems new.
weird.
I don't know.
Like, is it
I went
just-
to
is
I
this
went
like
to
Unsubtle way of like blocking customers from coming into the store.
yeah, I went to Victoria just like a block up from here,
Mhm.
and like that was a common place for people to go for lunch. So I have no memory of boxes blocking entrances.
Oh well,
Under fair.
my social anxiety was too strong to go in. With the boxes there. It's literally all it takes.
What's the email access for?
Did you have it on your phone by chance?
Oh, I can try that.
Because if you emailed it to the Gmail we have active here.
Okay.
I'm
I
okay.
think that might be my phone. That's okay, no worries.
Oh, they all look the same.
Black box.
Okay.
Perfect. You sent it to the youth council email. I have that up and running.
You work tomorrow?
Nope.
Tomorrow I'm going with my mom and husband to Drumheller.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
How long?
just for the day.
But you got
It's a day
married.
trip. Yep.
Well, congratulations.
Thank
Didn't
you.
know anything about this.
Oh yeah, no, I'm trying not to make too big of a deal of it right now. We're gonna have like the wedding more next year on our first anniversary. We just kind of got married now so we could go through the paperwork to get his citizenship in.
Oh, yes. Okay, I will forward this.
It will be to,
Come on, here. Presentation share it here. Come on, where's the?
And now I'm going through the hell of adding more paperwork onto it by preparing the backup plan
come
in
on,
case he's
that's
not
not
able to
it.
get his citizenship, which is I need to get a new American passport.
Never know what from.
so complete.
Okay, so what am I sending it to?
So that I can move to
AUC.
America if he's not able to get his citizenship,
Not yet.
or not citizenship, permanent residency,
Why would you
Meg.
go down?
Dot
so that we can move in
Y
together.
O U T H
That seems a
C
little.
O U N C I L.
Yeah, but I love my
I
husband.
know. Damn.
I love my husband and I don't trust Canada.
Yeah. But you could get Guantanamo, bro.
Get Guantanamo here. That's not special.
Not before you get Guantanamo there.
No, Canada, if America wanted me arrested, Canada would arrest me. Like they would just do it. Canada doesn't give a shit.
Big gay immigrants right now in America.
I'm not an immigrant.
Well, the dual citizenship. They're gonna see the same. I don't know. It's like seems.
Yeah, I'm a red-blooded American. My father's from California. His father before him was from North Dakota. And his father before him was from Minnesota. And his father before him was from fucking Prussia. What's more American than Prussia?
Email.
It's actually interesting. Basically, my whole side of the family on my dad's side are dual citizens, just kind of all the way down.
Damn.
'Cause like whenever the Prussians they came here, I believe during the Franco-Prussian War,
No, it's here.
they settled in Minnesota,
Yeah.
right on the border.
Mhm.
So like they just kind of like split off from there between Canada and the US. They just like couldn't decide which one they wanted.
And then I need to get Steven to give me access.
Oh.
Very common.
Yeah.
Could we text Steven and say, that he's
Or there's one really important.
It- it does really have
Yeah.
Can you check and see if he's online and we can just talk to him directly?
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Bro.
You wanna listen to?
So good.
I'm more worried about my husband's citizenship status because he's actually got like a Latino surname. Like that's more concerning to me than me.
Hey, you are?
Hi.
Okay,
Oh, hi.
all right, is he there?
Not yet, I wonder what's going on.
What is
I
it?
wanna make sure I'm
No.
in the right place.
Is anybody else on the line?
Not yet, no.
Something early in the morning, I think 10 a.m. or so.
Yeah.
I was going to jump Heller for a day trip.
I love Kenmore.
Yeah.
We used to go there every year when I was a kid.
Yeah, no, we heard that they're taking the dinosaur down, and yeah, apparently they're taking the dinosaur and Drumheller down.
I heard about
I mean, the museum or just?
No, just the giant, just
There's
the giant
this
dinosaur.
big ass T-Rex. and you
It's
can
the
go in
largest
mouth.
T-Rex in the world.
Yeah?
I believe.
Yes, you can go in the mouth.
Right.
Yeah, there's like stairs up, and then you can
I don't
go
know.
into the mouth of the T-Rex, and it's like super tall, and you can like look up.
Yeah, yeah, no, I heard that they're taking that down.
Taking it down.
Yeah, I think there's
That
safety
was-
concerns or something. I don't know.
Well, that's
Is it gonna come? Are they scared it's gonna come alive?
It should. I think that would be an objective improvement to Canada if it came out.
Like we animated a dinosaur. Jurassic Park theme.
Yeah. But yeah, no, and also like my husband's here for like basically visiting, and he's a big biology nerd. So
Oh,
I wanted to show him all the fossils and stuff.
Yeah.
That's what, this is, where.
No, he's from Texas.
A lot of people here.
Yeah, he's on a visitor visa. We're trying to get him his permanent residency, but
Yes.
yeah.
I mean,
We're trying to get him his permanent residency, but like,
He's in
I'm crossing my
Northern
fingers. As
Ireland.
far as I can tell, he should be able to, but I don't know, the sponsorship. Yeah, so I'm a Canadian citizen. I'm a dual citizen. I can do what I want in both countries.
Don't go there right now, especially with your problem.
Yeah, no kidding.
To the extent that you can do what you want as a citizen of a fascist country.
Yeah.
To an extent, absolutely.
Oh, it's not been too new in the US. ICE has been around since the Bush era.
Yeah, I mean,
They're just getting
They're-
a lot of something.
Yeah, they're getting a lot worse and a lot more funding, but it is still fairly the same shit in the US just ramped up.
Yeah, talking about how so much of the way this is being publicized is like FUD, like what tobacco companies did to sort of confuse people about research showing tobacco was harmful. They just like,
oh, they lied about it.
yeah,
Oh,
they
Lawrence.
created like ideological chaos, like,
You can come over here.
and
yeah.
my
Well,
friend
there's-
was saying like that's
I
one of the
haven't
things
been
that's
in here.
happening in the news.
No one.
There's like
I don't know if
sensationalism.
And then it's so funny that long.
Yeah, like
people are-
honestly, most Americans I'm talking to are like extremely concerned, but they're not really panicking the same way that I've seen Canadians
Yeah.
are. So I get the feeling that like Canadian news is.
What
Well,
was he
to a
again?
certain extent, it also sounds like there's like Canadian tourists who are dying in ICE custody, which is pretty new. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, you're like
ICE
rushing that
hasn't
Indian
gotten
leader.
Canadians before,
Yeah.
so that's kind of an escalation.
Yeah, like the way it's kind of like who they're putting away and how aggressively they're
I'm gonna
doing
take this
it,
cable.
and,
I'm gonna get this
also
Okay,
it's
for a
really
second, I
concerning
thought
if they
you
don't
had
have
a
to
word.
identify themselves.
Yeah, that's a really
Oh.
fucked up.
Yeah, like if there's something that's happening that is like.
Yeah, like it's definitely not a made up problem. It's just like somewhat. It's overstated in the fact that again, it's still U.S. as normal. This has been normal U.S. activity for the past 25-ish years.
Yeah.
AOC voted and people in the US were like, oh my god, Democrats voted for funding for Israel. I mean,
Is this your first day?
Is this your first first day? I mean, come on, you
Yeah.
guys.
First day on earth? That's how I feel
Like,
though,
big
yeah.
surprise.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, she's woke, but
Actually, if there's any updates, I heard that CPUSA is finally going to start running federal candidates.
they should. But especially when like
Yeah.
Mom Donnie in the States.
Yeah.
I get the feeling that Mamdani might have motivated this change because, like we were watching that video where it's like Mamdani won the primaries, and then you get like the centrist Democrats being all like,
Yeah.
"Oh, what was it like? Oh, we need to find an alternative candidate." Like they just
I thought it was
they completely abandoned the whole like vote. Yeah, they just abandoned.
Yeah.
Like as soon as you get like somebody who has like socialist sounding ideas.
Yeah.
Now it's dead. There's no more vote blue no matter who. It's we
Yeah.
need to find a better independent alternative.
Yeah, I get the sense that like, I also get the sense about Mamdani that like he's blunting his true views a bit, like to make him more palatable, which I actually think is good. I know I'm supposed to, I think you're kind of like a bad communist if you say, oh, it's good to have someone like that in electoral politics.
I mean, you're ultimately gonna flop at the end of the day.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course, that's,
But it's
of
like-
course, but I
Yeah.
also
But, like,
think
yeah,
that
I
the
agree with
Overton
you,
window,
exactly.
we should think about.
Yes.
I agree with
that's
you,
one.
Ken.
Yeah.
I wish
Yeah, I
I
feel
could
you.
do that to you, like, we should like do like a research on that one, because it's like really interesting.
Yeah, we
too.
should do, yeah, that would be really fun, I would be interested in that.
I remember my main experience with the Overton window was whenever I was speaking to a representative from the student union about free education as a policy, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I think Rob knows what I'm going on."
Yeah.
If you're like, "Well, you see, it's a great idea, but it's just not within the Overton window right now. Right now, we
Yes.
have to ask for caps on how much they're raising
Right.
tuition."
So
Mm.
crazy.
And he's like, and then he also gave me a warning. He was like, yeah, and if any of our student groups are trying to ask for anything that isn't allowing for the 2% increase per year, then we would have to cut their funding.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
Hey, who was this?
that was Chris Beasley.
Chris Beasley.
Yeah, he's not around anymore. He graduated.
Okay.
Now
He's
he's
in a CPC now.
Mhm.
oh God no,
He was-
Oh.
God no, that guy was not a communist.
Oh, right, okay.
No, he was starting to
Hi.
defund student
Yeah.
activists. That
Oh,
guy's he described the student union politics as small c conservatism. Now, I don't know if that was his own views or if that is
Is he just being a word salad?
I
kind of
have-
guy?
oh yeah, definitely. Also, it's like completely
Yeah.
breaking the
Oh,
nonpartisanship policy. It's just blatantly breaking it.
It's funny to like see a lot of
How would I
people
know that
in
if you
North
didn't show it
America
to
the
me?
States about their political takes.
You got headphones
really
on,
bad.
you're just the only
It's
person
something-
getting shot.
Um,
Like, see,
Like,
okay, do you guys
and he
know
like
about
leans in a little,
Chris
like,
Jordan?
Yes.
and
Who?
he's like,
He's
The dark enlightened
Yeah.
guy, yeah. Yeah.
Nick Land.
Nick Land is dark and light, oh, okay. that's right.
The argument is like effective acceleration is.
It's actually
Yeah.
really scary though, the shit that
Yes.
Curtis Jarman says, and he's kind of like he's sort of like their like the MAGA like philosopher
He's their
king.
prophet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so
all it
like
is.
the whole Project 2025 is just out of Curtis Jarman's ideas, like that's what it is. And
Yeah.
so, but it's interesting because nobody knows who he is. Like I go on Twitter and I look at his like following, and I
Is
have
it
just
just
like
like a
casual shit
pseudonym?
posting friends who have more followers than that. What's that?
like a pseudonym of a guy.
No, his
Oh.
name is Curtis Jarman, and he was saying. I
That's
can't
crazy.
remember what he actually does anymore, but he also is like all like rubbing shoulders with all these like AI guys, and
Nice.
Oh,
Yeah,
bros.
yeah.
they're
Yeah.
techno fascists, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Oh.
he's into techno fascism, so
He was the head of the Seasteading Institute.
Oh, which one?
The Seasteading Institute.
Oh, you know what? I think that's the other thing I'd say is sort of
Oh,
changing in this
libertarian,
is I
okay.
think that we're starting to see a bit of a generational
Yeah.
shift because I swear to God, the kind of arising techno fascism stuff is stuff I've already seen from like even real life friends, but also just a lot of like random online forums and stuff growing up. And when I was young, I was like, nobody's ever gonna take this stuff seriously. And now I'm like, holy shit, it's actually getting into politics now.
yeah, I actually think that they like I think that Curtis Jarman play like the role he plays in perpetuating US propaganda like as it exists today is like very, very significant and people don't really realize that. But one scary thing that like one thing he
The
said
one more guy and dead or like five guys.
he says things that are quite literally the opposite of true. But he's like a
What a
smart
man.
person. So I know that he knows that what he's saying isn't true. So one thing that he says is like, he's like tweeting the other day, he's like, I think this is why right wingers will never have power.
Who said this?
Because we're so humble about it and left will always be in power and rightists have no power.
Are you
And-
kidding?
But I think that he doesn't actually believe that. I think he's saying it because he has this following of like dumb chuds who were like,
Yeah.
you're so right.
No,
and they're like,
it can't be I guess close enough that like far right guys are the most pathetic losers who are so self-victimizing.
yeah.
They
I know we're
hate
just
themselves.
but we don't want power. It's like all you guys talk about is like conquest, and it's like weird. It's like you're LARPing as powerful, even. So, but what my point is like, he says it. I think just to like literally cause ideological chaos.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah.
think that's his whole aim.
Yeah.
He knows that that isn't true.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's basically what a lot of
But
Do
that's-
do anything-
It's greatly affected like right-wing tactics in
It's
America.
extremely
It's
affected.
ideological
We have people-
chaos. Like,
Yeah.
I think half the reason why why Trump was able to get elected is because nobody actually knows what Trump's politics is because everybody thinks that Trump supports their politics.
Yeah.
So that's been a big thing with like far right stuff. Is like
Yeah.
the anti-immigration stuff. Trump has been very specific on like we are going to deport all the illegals. We're going to expand stand on the
Dum,
green
dum,
card
dum.
program for more legal immigrants.
Yeah.
Because like
Right.
that's his workforce is legal immigrants.
Right.
Are the
Because
reason that people
don't understand.
Okay,
want to deport all immigrants.
Exactly.
can
but
I
they
get
don't-
people online? Am I sharing the screen with you right now, or do you see anything? Do you?
No, I see the camera.
Okay, all right.
Oh, I can show you how to.
And, yeah, that's it, right? Share that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good job.
Aha, we did it. We're learning. All right, cool. All right.
Yep, I see it now.
We're doing the best we can with what Google has given us. Can people
Buddy.
online see the slides now? Yes.
Yep.
Is Naomi here? Well, hello, my name is Stephen. I think I'm I am Naomi's teaching assistant, so I'm her TA really. I'm not, it's really her course still. But yeah, Stephen Griffith, I'm in the party. I've been there since about 2017. Yeah, I think this is our first lesson. And we, yeah. Do we have? Did I see the print out?
Do you have any like sheet? Address?
Yeah, there's, so if you see there's some labor power, there's some printout there.
yeah.
It's
Print
it's
that out.
supplement. So I don't know, I don't know, I think we may have screwed up. I didn't know there was an online component.
These are multiple. pages.
There's some more?
Oh, there are
Yeah.
multiple pages.
Oh,
15
or some of
pages
them-
altogether.
Oh,
Ah,
Oh,
some of them
there's-
are
there's
stapled.
There's some loose.
Okay, I
newspapers,
apologize.
but you're not gonna see them, it's fine.
We're gonna circle back to this. Oh, man, yeah, let me see here.
Oh, okay, we found it.
yeah, I was like, what the hell are those in here? Actually, can I have one of those to write on?
We should get started.
There's a lot of people here, aren't there? Yes, it's a popular thing. You want this?
Is the people in on Zoom too?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're sharing.
Okay, can they see the whole?
Article 7, right? So,
As one of the people that's joining online, I just have one request. Whoever the speaker is, can we just make sure they sit close to the microphone so that we can get decent audio quality?
110%.
Thank you.
Okay, how is, okay, hold on a minute, please. Okay, sound test, how's this?
That's pretty good.
Okay. Does pretty good mean that it is good, or do you need it fixed?
Oh, no, I hear you clearly, loud and clear.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's get started then. First of all, like I'm, very pleased to see so many people here and online. Thank you all very much for coming. So this is Marxism 101. The idea is that we're just going to go through like 6 sessions where in each of which we're going to deal with just a couple of fundamental concepts of Marxist theory. So by the end of this, we don't expect everyone to be an expert on everything. But what we do expect is that really by the end of it, you'll know if you're a Marxist or not. Like you'll see whether these concepts make sense to you. And if they do, then there's, implications about what you're going to do in terms of your political activity going forward. So each session there'll be like a presentation, a very brief reading. So at the end of the presentation, we'll take a kind of little break for people to actually read in this case, it's about 6 pages. Then we'll come back again, like for discussion, questions, discussion. So I hope to keep the presentation relatively short so that there's more time for discussion at the end. So without more ado, I think let's get on with the first. The first session is essentially about economics, it's the fundamental economic theories. So, or the fundamental economic concepts of Marxism. Now, when we, sorry, can you move the okay, so basically, in this, we're not going to look at the whole history of economics of all possible systems all through history. We're going to just focus on capitalism. Capitalism is essentially a system where the primary form of production is of commodities, which means things are produced for the purpose of selling them, not for people's own personal use. Like you're not growing your own food, you're not weaving your own clothes to wear. You're producing things for the purpose of having them go to market and be sold. So there are those who have the capital to invest in this process, and there are those who have nothing but their own labor power to sell. And this is the essential fundamental class division in capitalist society. Now, we as communists, we don't have any brief for capitalism as a system. We do not have to try to twist and turn our economic theory in order to come to a conclusion that justifies capitalism. So we always are, I mean, if we go off on a tangent, we should realize that we always actually have to come back to the actual realities of the world. And we're not coming up with weird gobbledygook theories that, that would to twist the reality so that everything comes out right and capitalism always works well. Some things about it work, some things don't. And in particular, like the idea of competitive capitalism, which is such a religious concept to North American liberals, especially, is essentially an unstable and precarious situation because the very process of competition means that the less successful competitors are defeated, they go bankrupt. The remaining capitalist enterprises become larger, eventually get to the situation of a handful of large companies dominating the market. That's not competition anymore, that's monopoly. And that's an innate tendency that arises out of the reality of competition and always will. And politics comes into play as well. Like the world is not composed of abstract market forces. It's composed of people who are carrying out policies. And whether they carry out policies that are in the interests of capitalists or the workers makes a big difference in the outcome of human history. Okay, so I guess we can go on to the next slide. So as I say, as communists, we don't feel like we have to apologize. We don't have to justify capitalism. So when we see something that just doesn't work, that's intrinsically contradictory and is obviously going to lead to instability, we don't have to try to reason it away. We acknowledge that that's a reality of capitalism. So just sort of as a sort of background to this, just as an overall point of view, like capitalism is not inherently democratic. Socialism is not inherently undemocratic. Like those two poles, that's not the poles that really exist in the world. Democratic capitalism and dictatorial socialism. Sorry, the world just isn't like that. And it's a system. It works according to some objective rules of how economies must work. This is not because capitalists are mean and nasty or that there's a big conspiracy. A capitalist could be a good person. That doesn't negate the reality that capitalism is an exploitative system. I mean, I remember a passage where Marx and Engels were talking about Owen, the British, sort of Robert Owen. Like, he was a mill owner, but he was like, they referred to him as that saintly man because he was, he cared about his workers and he didn't lay them off during a recession, and he tried to set up a kind of a utopian society, which just didn't work. Their point is that his saintliness didn't really change the exploitative nature of capitalism. So we're talking about what I want to talk about today, mostly, to keep in mind, doesn't have moral content. We will draw some conclusions about what's good and bad. But what the economic concepts aren't moral ones. We're not saying it's not good or bad. This is how it really is. Okay, so we can go on to the next. So, as I said before, so to actually get into the economics of it now. capitalism is based on the production of commodities. A commodity is basically anything which is produced by human labor for the purpose of being sold in the market. This means that the concept that it's being transformed by human labor is really key. Even if the transformation is just you go out and pick the berries, or you dig it up out of the ground, or you cut down the tree for firewood. It's the tree in itself is not a commodity and has no economic value. The berries growing on a wild berries growing on a bush have no value. Oil in the ground has no economic value. The value comes when labor is used to process it and bring it into a condition which can be sold on the market. So, and again, a commodity is for sale. This is independent of its use, of what it could be used for, and whether the use is good or bad. From the point of view of the laws of how capitalism works, heroin is a commodity, bomber planes are a commodity, vaccines are a commodity, food is a commodity. Whether you think they're valuable or think that they're deleterious does not matter. If it can be sold, if there's a market, if someone's producing it for the purpose of selling it on the market, that makes it a commodity. Okay.
You want to do the post-hole kind of thought experiment?
The
Like,
post-hole.
Is a post-hole a commodity? Talk about that?
Actually, I think we'll get to that at the next step. Because what is a commodity worth? And this is where we come to really an intrinsic concept in Marxist economics, which is that the value of a commodity is proportional to the socially necessary labor time required to produce. There's a lot of things in that, like every one of those words means something. As I said before, like raw materials just in their raw state have no value. Work must be done to process them for them to acquire value, and the value is proportional to the amount of work it takes to produce them. But not just any old work. Socially necessary labor time means according to the standards and methods of production that are the norm in this economy. So if somebody is like kind of unskilled and lazy and takes twice as long to do the work as somebody else who has a skill, that doesn't make their commodity worth twice as much. The value of the commodity is based on what would be the amount of time required by a worker of the normal skills within that industry. And then again, the materials that are part of a commodity take part in its value, but only to the extent that those materials were already commodities, that they already embodied some amount of socially necessary labor time. Right? So as I say, the oil in the ground is not a commodity, it has no value. Once it's been extracted, refined, that takes labor. It also takes labor to produce the machinery that was used to extract it. It takes labor to it also takes labor to go out and do the seismic exploration to find the oil. So all the actual socially necessary labor that went into getting that oil out of the ground determines the actual value of that commodity. But once you have machinery or raw materials or something like that as an input into a productive process, basically that value is only passed on unchanged. If we're producing a barrel of oil and the socially necessary labor time required to produce all the machines and all the other inputs, amounts, like the share of the use of those the wear and tear on those machines and so on. If the value of the labor required to produce that barrel of oil is $15, then that $15 is just passed on as part of the value of that barrel of oil. So, okay, we can go on to the next slide. So where does profit come from then? And basically it comes out of the use of labor power and the expropriation of surplus labor in the actual production process. So we have to distinguish the concept of labor power, which is the capacity to do work, from the actual use of that labor power, which is the labor where the power is actually being expended. So when the capitalist hires a worker, they're hiring their potential to work, their capacity for work. And then they put that to work for, the standard is 8 hours a day. Quite often nowadays, it might be 10 or 12 hours a day. Whatever number of hours of work they can get out of that. But they haven't purchased 10 hours of labor. They purchased the capacity for labor, because labor power. Sorry, it will take a while to get through this before we get to the point where you can see why the distinction matters. So labor power is also a commodity in a capitalist system. The labor is labor power is for sale in the market. And what is the value of that commodity? Same as any other commodity. It is the socially necessary labor time required to produce it. Which means what it basically boils down to is the equivalent of the amount of labor that's required to feed, clothe, house, and educate that worker up to the standard of education they need to do the work that they're doing. Now, more highly skilled labor requires more training. So that labor power is actually more valuable because more labor was required to produce it. Besides just the actual food and clothing and so on, they needed the labor of teachers, university professors, or whatever, to actually train that person. And in the same way that like the capitalists can't just buy a machine, use it until it breaks down, and then that's the end of it. They have to actually set aside money to replace the machine once it breaks down. So the value of the machine is passed on to the commodities sort of like bit by bit in that form of wear and tear. The value of labor power is passed on bit by bit to the commodities that worker produces in their lifetime, as well in the form of wear and tear, or when they get old and can't work anymore, even if they don't actually die on the job. So there's a certain amount of necessary labor time required to put into replacing that labor once it's been used up. That is supporting the family of the worker so that their children can come along and be hired at a similar job in the next generation. So as a general rule, the value of labor power is the socially necessary labor time required to produce all the goods and services that are going to be necessary to sustain that worker alive and capable, healthy enough to work, plus to raise the next generation of workers to replace them. And again, this is the socially necessary labor time, meaning there are going to be certain social standards. These things do have a subjective cultural aspect, like the concept of how well fed the workers need to be and how well educated they need to be and how much spare time they ought to have. These are not really cut and dried. These are areas of struggle between capital and labor. But the basic economic reality is still that the value of labor power is the amount of labor required to produce the goods and services required to produce the laborer and their offspring. So, yeah. Okay. Okay. I know this. Yeah. This is the big concept, and I know it's quite different from anything that anybody got taught in bourgeois economics at school. The value of a commodity is proportional to the socially necessary labor time required to produce it. This holds true as well for this special commodity of labor power. The value of labor power is the socially necessary time required to produce it, i.e. required to produce all the goods and services that the worker and their family have to consume to remain alive and healthy enough to do the work. So now, okay, so I think we can go on to the next slide. I think belabored that point enough. Okay, so here again, it's important to say that labor time is not the same thing as labor power. Like, labor time is a measure of, the actual time of work is, proportionally determines the value of commodities. Labor power is the potential to do work. But you don't have to get to a very high level of technology in human history for people to actually be able to produce a surplus. That's if they work a reasonable amount of time every day, they're actually able to produce more than the bare minimum that is required to sustain them in life. So there's a surplus. Right? Like it might only take 6 hours to produce enough, 6 hours on average of all the workers working at all the kinds of work to produce all the stuff that's necessary to keep them alive. But they don't stop working at 6 hours. They work for 8 hours or 10 or 12 or whatever it is, whatever's the sort of social norm that's been imposed on them. So they're actually producing more than than what covers the value of their wages. The wages only pay for their labor power. And that might be enough, enough for a corresponding set of goods and services that might take 6 hours to produce. But they work for 8 hours. They've produced a surplus over and above what's necessary to pay them in wages. That surplus is the source of all profit and the accumulation of wealth. Now, in Marx and what I'm saying here, like there's the concept of the 6 hours and 2 hours, but that's not a magic number. The more as automation proceeds and labor becomes more productive because the machinery allows you to produce more stuff with the same amount of time. It might only take 4 hours to produce enough for everything that the worker and their family needs. On average, like the average of all the workers working 4 hours a day produces enough for all the workers on average to have that, that rate of subsistence. Or maybe 3 hours, or maybe 2. As factories become more and more automated, the amount of time it takes to produce the equivalent of the necessary goods and services to sustain the family becomes a smaller and smaller part of the workday. So in fact, the rate of exploitation of labor can go up. See, someone's asking, are we using the term surplus value and surplus labor interchangeably? Not 100%, but roughly speaking, we could say that they are equivalent, because the surplus labor is expropriated by the capitalist, and that's the surplus value, which is in fact their profit. Now it's okay. It's not 100% profit because some of it has to be put back into investment, but we're not even going to get into that today. That's set that one aside. Yeah. Okay. So I guess just sort of belaboring this point again, because this is what's difficult. This is what's totally different from what your high school or university economics course would have told you. That labor time's not the same as labor power. Labor time, the amount of labor time required to produce commodities is what gives them their relative value to each other. So something that takes longer to produce costs more, is actually worth more. But the labor power is a commodity which has a value of what's required to produce it, not how much value it can produce when it's put to work, but how much it's required to produce it. So this labor power is this special commodity, the only commodity which is capable of creating more value than it consumes. I mean, which it just basically boils down to, we can produce more than we absolutely need. Right? And the more the economy develops and machinery and automation and AI, the less labor is required to produce the actual minimum requirement that's needed to sustain people. The greater the wealth that can be produced. So basically, what it boils down to is workers can produce more than they need to consume overall in the economy as a whole. And that surplus that they produce over what they can consume is where all profit comes from. Okay, so we can go on to the next slide. So here's where we come again to the definition of a term which we use as Marxists differently from the way it's used in normal conversation, which is exploitation. What we mean by exploitation is that the capitalist, who is the owner of the factory and the machines and the means of production, who hires the worker, gets to keep that surplus labor value. And this is the essence of exploitation, is that the work that the workers are obliged to do produces some value which comes back to them in the form of labor, but it produces additional value which is kept by the employer as profit. And that's the essence of exploitation, is that the workers producing more value than what they're getting back as an equivalent in wages. So we don't mean by exploitation, we don't restrict that to meaning if the boss is a particularly bad boss, or if the working conditions are worse than usual. A particularly nice boss is still, if they're making a profit on their business, they're expropriating surplus value. And that's exploitation. So again, it's not a moral term in this case. It's an economic category. So we can have our moral opinions about it, but we're not using it to condemn the capitalists as people. We're using it to describe capitalism as a system. Okay, so we can go on from that one. Okay. So capitalists, of course, don't like this. Like, in fact, the whole history of bourgeois economics, of the study of economics since the time of Marx, has been a desperate attempt to refute this basic reality that capitalism is an exploitative system. No, they say that there's some kind of there's this magical essence that they supply, which is, I don't know, like vision or entrepreneurship or whatever that has some magical quality which generates some enormous value, which justifies them retaining an enormous proportion of the overall production. But it just ain't so, right? I mean, this is their story, which is why they have to have basically voodoo economics. And
Voodoo economics.
like just talking gobbledygook about. I mean, like, well, I don't know if you've taken a course like this where you have like the theory about supply and demand, and you have these completely rational consumers who enter the market with complete knowledge and always make rational decisions about what they're going to spend their money on. And if the price goes up, they'll buy less, never mind if it's, something absolutely essential like food, as opposed to, going for manicures or something. But it's like, I mean, every part of that is just not true. There's no such thing as the totally rational consumer. There's no such thing as the complete knowledge of the market. There's no such thing as this perfect form of competition within the marketplace and the perfect responsiveness of the market to supply and demand. I mean, prices do fluctuate according to supply and demand, but they they fluctuate around the real value of the commodity, which is based on the amount of necessary labor time required to produce it. So there's no such thing as a reasonable profit, because the profit arises from exploitation. So the question of whether it's reasonable or unreasonable simply doesn't really come into it. We don't care about how reasonable it is. Right? It comes from the fact that the capitalist is able to expropriate the surplus labor. So, okay. Okay, so we can go from that. Okay.
But this is the.
Okay, so this is a big chunk of an idea, and I from a personal experience, I know it took me some ruminating on it to really get it, but I'm going to throw another one out, which, to add to this picture. So we have this capitalist system, like, I mean, it's not unreasonable. It's not, because of what I've said, does not necessarily imply that the workers should receive the full value of that they produce, that their wages should not cover 100% of what they produce. Because actually we do need to keep some back. We do need money to invest. We do need, like taxes that go for social services and infrastructure, and money that needs to be invested in replacing old, worn out machinery, and in putting into research and development to create better and more productive methods of production. So we need to have a surplus that's collected and used socially, not just given out as wages individually. So again, it's not a moral concept that there is surplus value, that that as if it should not exist. It does exist. It's a reality. But so what does the capitalist do with that surplus? Well, some of it they spend on themselves, but mostly they reinvest it. Now, circling back to the socially necessary labor time. This means, like, if anybody can come up with a way of doing something more efficiently, they've got an edge. They can actually well, this is what patents are all about. Right? When you come up with a better way of doing something, it makes the production process more efficient. That means less labor time is required for the production of each unit of this commodity. But they're given an artificial monopoly on that patent for a certain amount of time. So they can make extra profit, like as a reward for their enterprise and the investment in this new technology. They can sell the product at the value that it has according to its socially necessary labor time, while they themselves have this special process, which is more productive. So less labor time is actually required to produce it. So they're getting more surplus value out of their production process for that period of time while they hold that patent. But then eventually the patent expires. The new, more productive method is adopted by the entire industry. The overall value of each individual unit of the commodity goes down because the whole process has become more efficient. Less labor is required to produce it. The same amount of raw materials may be required, but less labor time because they're using a better machine. But the cost of the machinery is passed on as part of the cost of the product, of the commodity. As I said, at the beginning, the cost of the machinery doesn't generate profit in and of itself. It doesn't generate surplus labor, but the value of the machinery is incorporated into the value of the products. The same as, the costs of the value of the inputs, the materials that they buy in order to do the production. These are passed on unchanged, these values. So the wear and tear on the machinery is passed on as part of the cost of the socially necessary labor time required to produce the product. So, besides the time that the workers spend in the factory producing it, there's like 1/1,000,000th of the time that it required to produce that machine if that machine is able to produce 1 million of the commodity, of units of the commodity until it wears out. But this process of creating more productive machinery and more productive processes is itself rather expensive. So as opposed to hiring a whole bunch of people to get out there with axes, you're paying for one great big saw. And after that, you're paying for one great big thing on a tractor, which is like the size of 16 saws. And the overall cost of the machinery actually goes up. And the very fact that less of labor time is required to produce the commodity at this stage that you're working at means that as a proportion of the overall commodity, the cost of the initial investment in the machinery and the raw materials is a bigger proportion of the overall value of the commodity. Like less of the value of the commodity comes from the last stage of labor that this particular capitalist has hired workers to do. And more of the value comes from the crystallized labor that was already incorporated into that very expensive machine and the raw materials. So what does this mean? That in order to exploit labor and receive say 2/3 of the value of the labor that's done by the workers in their factory, they have to invest not just in the wages, but in the machinery. And the more they have to invest in the machinery, the smaller the proportion of the surplus labor is to the overall investment. So this is basically the tendency of the rate of profit to fall. Now, this is not 100, this is not an ironclad rule. It's not like the law of gravity, but it's a very strong overall tendency in the economy, which comes back many, many times, more often than not. The more productive process involves more elaborate, more expensive machinery, and therefore labor being a smaller proportion of the overall value of the commodity, or the last stage of living labor being a smaller proportion compared to the crystallized labor of this very expensive machine, there's just more investment required to get to the point where you pay wages and expropriate the surplus labor. Yeah.
So like it's like the more successful they are inventing machines, coming up with new ideas, putting the price down and competing with each other, the more that capitalism works the way it's supposed to work, the less profitable it is.
Yes.
So they have to do something to stop that degeneration of
Yes.
their profit. Okay.
Okay, that's it in a nutshell.
Wow.
Is the crisis like this is related to like crisis of overproduction, right? Because if you're like, if that puts, I don't know, if you're basically this process means you're laying off people, right? And it means that your people who buy stuff don't have as much money to buy
Yeah.
back into the economy. So there's an overproduction of commodities,
Right.
which I think is a different concept, but I always like had them a little
Yeah.
crossed in my head, this
Yeah.
concept and that one.
Yeah. But okay, yeah, it's not exactly the same,
Yeah.
but it will certainly have that effect.
Okay.
And we can circle back to the fact that if workers overall working as hard as they do work are producing more than is necessary to sustain them, how are they going to sell the surplus? How are they going to? So I mean, this is the essence of the problem of recurring economic crises, like the boom and bust cycle of capitalism, and it's intrinsic to capitalism. Only in the rare exceptional case, you might have a situation where the surplus production, the surplus value produced, just matches up with the investment opportunities that exist in that society. But on average, that's less likely to happen than that everybody working at a reasonable rate produces more than everybody needs. And but even more so, more than they have the wages to buy. So some of that can be sold in the form of like wretched excess of, unnecessary luxuries for the wealthy people. And, and like deliberately wasteful use of, splashing money around so that in a way that doesn't doesn't generate any more demand in the market, it just disappears. But the overall trend towards more mechanization, more automation, more AI means, yes, less labor is required to produce what's necessary. You're going to wind up with that surplus that nobody can buy. And as you say, it's exacerbated by the fact that then they lay off workers. Instead of saying, oh, well, society is so productive, we're going to have a 4-hour work week. No, they say we're going to continue to have a 40-hour work week and expect that the few workers that we retain are going to be coerced into working even more than that because they're so afraid of losing their jobs. And we're just going to lay off 9/10 of the workforce. I mean, that's the logic of capitalism, right? From the point of view of every individual capitalist, that's the profit maximizing strategy. From the point of view of the system as a whole, it breaks down. Yeah, so
question.
yeah.
And add in response to what Darcy asked, that when you go and like create new machines and so forth to create like products more cheaply, you need to sell more of those products. And that's the whole thing that chases the bourgeois to expand new markets. And eventually you can't find new markets to use the products that you produce.
Yeah, exactly. And
even if there's no unemployment, people just don't have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We'll go into that in more detail next week.
That's
So,
like
okay.
the full.
Yeah, actually, before we go on here, maybe we should double check like whether any of the people on Zoom have their hands up and want to
No one
say anything or ask any questions.
You almost forget that there are people on Zoom.
Yeah.
Ian. Ian.
Yeah, just a question. So, is there like a reading or anything where the crisis of overproduction is mentioned? Because I feel like I've heard that word floated around, but I'm actually not really sure where it comes from. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, it's quite an old phrase. I mean, it goes back to the earliest stages of this kind of analysis, but I can't remember offhand where the phrase is first seen.
It's from the manifest.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I can't remember though if we've actually put any readings like that into this particular course, but I'm going to make a note that we will circle back to that. Like, if it's not actually covered in any readings, we're going to look up another an extra source for people.
I'm wondering if what do you mean by socialism is not the opposite of capitalism? What does that mean? And you said what socialism isn't, what capitalism isn't.
Okay, that's your phrase, Stephen. You want to answer?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, okay, like capitalism is in conversation with socialism and communism, right? They're iterations on each other. So like, it's pure antithesis. And a lot of the problems the capitalism is trying to solve, Marxism and socialism are actually like more refined responses to addressing those same concerns. So there's actually like a genesis, and that we're actually like we are in a conversation with capitalism. We're not simply purely rejecting capitalism outright. And I don't know how important that is, but I
Wait, why aren't we rejecting capitalism?
rejecting capitalism's particular like formations and proper explanations, but often because we are like, but I think it's just like they have valid concerns, is all I'm saying. They're trying to address them. We're saying they're not addressing them well enough, and we have a better option.
Okay.
Also, we're not going to reject the benefits of capitalism. I mean, you go and read like in the manifesto, right? It sounds as if like it sounds like there's passages in there like that could have been written by MAGA, I mean, they're just it's like talking about the wonders of how productive and capitalism compared to feudalism that came before it. We're not going to get rid of the the incredible increase in productivity that's happened under capitalism. We're not going to reject, all the wonders of modern technology. We're not going to reject the interconnectedness of the world that has arisen during the capitalist system, but we're going to rework them in our own image. Right?
Okay.
I'm gonna ask Matt had a point. Matt, do you want to speak to that? It's just a little long and I have a hard time displaying on the screen. Do you want to speak to it or should we come back to it? We are gonna have more discussion at the end. So how do you want to proceed?
Well, I guess we can get on to other people's questions.
Yes, thank you, Virginia. Yeah, but Matt, I saw you had a comment.
Yeah, we could come back at the end. I just want to
yeah.
clarify. I want some clarification when there's time.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Maybe I can just
Okay.
for sure. Okay, so Matt, we're going to pop back into the. Alan, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, one of the things, if you compare today, I know that even years ago it was said with technology having displaced or made production so much more efficient that if a worker worked 8 hours in certain industries, that he made his wages in about 2 hours. And today, with how technology has advanced, I'm pretty darn certain that there are places where a worker can put in his 8 hours and it takes him less than 1 hour to make those wages, and the rest goes to the boss in the surplus value, and it goes into the boss's pocket to do whatever he wants with it. Another thing, when countries, the capitalist countries go into countries of the developing world where labor hasn't asserted itself in terms of having union protection, they will work or have their workers work and pay them at below the cost of replacing that labor whenever they can get away with it.
Oh, yes. So we'll come back to that actually a bit more next week in the next session. We'll delve into those things more deeply, into the international aspects as well. But I mean, it's quite true. Like once the value of labor power is the socially necessary labor time required to produce it, like to produce the subsistence for the worker and their family. But that does not automatically mean that the wages that are paid are in fact the value of their labor power. The capitalist always has a vested interest in pushing down wages and salaries. The workers have a vested interest in pushing them up. There's going to be give and take and back and forth. And there's, in conditions of crisis, it can well be that wages go below subsistence. I mean, we actually see that right now in the modern world. People can't afford to live on one job. People can't afford one apartment for themselves. Right? Like the value of wages is being pushed down below subsistence. And so that, there's nothing automatic about what wages are actually paid. Just like there's nothing automatic about what price the commodity has in the market. I mean, if you price it unrealistically, it's not going to sell. But there's always some struggle and give and take between capital and labor about what the wages should be. And in this reading that we'll get to in a minute, like Marx was talking about in a situation where there were people who were arguing that, there's no point in trying to get higher wages because all these economic forces will just work out so that it just all comes out the same in the end. And you say, no, there's give and take. There's room for, if the workers get higher wages, that means that the capitalists get less profit, but that's, there's nothing fixed about that. So, okay, anyway, so circling back to the case of the tendency of the rate of profit to fall. So, for example, so if we actually look at the sort of the idea of the sort of future singularity, like where everything's done by machines and zero labor is required for anything, what happens then? Right. I mean, suppose you've got a, like, I mean, take the case of like, you've got a factory that's really very automated, and so like the machines cost millions of dollars. It only takes a handful of workers to do the work. Very small amount of surplus labor is being produced, even though those workers are very productive. Each one of them is very productive, but there are so few of them compared to the amount that's of money that has to be invested in the machinery, which is machinery being really crystallized labor that came from other labor processes, sort of upstream of that one. So the more, as the whole factory gets more and more automated, there's fewer and fewer workers to exploit. Eventually you get to what would happen if you got to the point of zero labor?
There can't be profits.
There's no profit, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, if we accept the reality of the labor theory of value, right, that value comes from labor, not from raw materials, but from labor, then if you as the amount of labor that's in the commodity goes to zero, and the only thing left is the value that's passed on unchanged from the previous labor that was done to create the machinery and extract the raw materials, then there's just nowhere for surplus labor to be created within that particular automated factory. But the same is true, going back upstream. What about the factory that manufactured the machinery that automated factory uses? As it becomes more and more automated, more and more of the value, more and more of what's the value that's embodied in those machines is just coming from the value that was already embodied in the raw materials and the input machinery for that process. The less labor there is there from which to extract profit. There's no profit to be made out of manufacturing those machines. Take it a step further back, all through the whole economy. Like it's important to recognize we're not talking about each individual worker and each individual business. We're talking about the economy as a whole. Like, you can't really say that the value of labor, it's actually hard to put a dollar value on a certain amount of labor time, except by looking at the economy as a whole, right? Because again, it's the socially necessary labor time. And so we can see that the working class as a whole produces so much value in the GDP, and its wages are so much, and there's a discrepancy there. But we're not talking about the case of an individual worker. Right? But we're not going to get into all that stuff about what if somebody's particularly talented or works hard, or what if this boss is particularly clever. No, it's about the economy as a whole, right? So so this situation where the capitalists look forward to this wonderful world in which there's no labor, they don't have to pay any wages. They're not going to like it when they get there because there's going to be zero profit. A socialist society could run like that. We could decide, okay, factories, go ahead, do your thing, right? Like we're going to make use of the value that's produced and distribute it, and everybody's going to have a good life with really minimal amount of work. But that doesn't work for the capitalist. Right? The capitalists need labor. They need more labor in order to be able to extract more surplus labor. And so the whole process of automation generating less labor, requiring less labor, just works against their profitability in the long run. So again, without having to get into any moral questions, the system is intrinsically contradictory. It's intrinsically going to to be a victim of its own success. It's going to fall apart. So, okay, what time are we at? Yeah, okay, so I don't want to keep talking forever, so I think this is a good time, like, if people want to take a look at the reading, there's copies here, we may have to sort of sort them out. There, for those who are online, you should have, like, in the course outline document that was attached, there's a couple of links there. What would like people to quickly take a look at is, in the first link, it takes you to the beginning of chapter 6 in value, price, and profit. But I actually would suggest that we start reading at, what page am I at? 7. At chapter 7, labor power. And there's 6 pages: labor power, production of surplus value, and value of labor. And, no, it's not that one, it's the previous one. So I'm not going to ask everybody to read both of these things right now. It's value and labor. And we started at chapter 6, but I think just in terms of the amount of time we want to take up here, if people are actually going to read it right now, it's just starting at chapter 7, which is labor power. This goes over basically this same material in Marx's words, which may or may not be more easily understood than what I've been saying. So I'm going to suggest we just take maybe 10 minutes right now and read those 6 pages of those particular chapters, and then we'll come back and do have more discussion. And okay, so copies. Okay. Sorry. We're gonna have to. Here, we're gonna have to. Let's. I didn't collate them there, so it's page 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Some of these are already.
Yeah, I think what happened here is that these guys were printed like, these are all page 12.
These are all like page 7.
Yeah. But I mean, there's gonna be a
Yeah,
bunch.
there were a bunch. I just printed out 5 of each page, but they're not yet collated. They came off the little printer. So
11.
mhm.
These. What?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
they haven't been collated.
Yeah. Gotcha. Let me just. No, this is mine. Yeah, I know.
Hey, can y'all drop a link to the document in the chat, please, whenever you have a second?
I can't read all of mine.
I have 11. Yeah, let me put them in 11.
I'm gonna do
Wait, buddy. Here's one more 11 with him. And here we got 12.
Mine isn't working.
Okay, that's so
They're just like stragglers. That's
yeah,
what's
this is from the whole illness. Okay, here's a stuff. You need. Oh, you sure, thank you. Okay, has everybody got a copy now?
I don't. I can't get into my copy. I can't get it to scroll down so I can read it properly.
Well, we can't really fix that for you. Get your dad to come and help you out. If you should, like the file that we sent you of the outline of the course has links in it. So if you click on it, you should get to a file that.
Virginia,
Yeah.
just go in with mom and read it with her, okay? It's all you have to do is go into the next room.
Are we going to edit that part out or not? Oh, it's the complete. Okay. No, it's okay. I'll read it off this one.
Well, all I can say is all you younger people are a heck of a lot better with computers than I am, because I have no idea how to get there.
Can you go to the comment section and you can, there'll be a
What,
link.
what section?
The comments in the Zoom, so there'll be a chat, so it's like a little text box thing. You don't
Oh, man
There's a
alive.
chat. I don't know if you can see what I'm, you probably can't. You can open the chat. Is there any insightful comments?
You're pretty quiet, Steven, just so you know if you're talking to people on Zoom.
Oh, so Alan, yeah, if you can find the chat function in Zoom,
Oh,
be on the bottom. It look like two like speech bubbles. One of them has an ellipsis inside it, like three little dots.
okay. I'll try and find that. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, find that.
Oh, tautological. That would be like me saying, I know the Bible is true because the Bible said so.
That's true. Logical things are practical. That's like I'm reading like Marxist books and I'm like define. Who is this person? Who's that person? Who is Markov? Who is this guy? Why is he being kissed by Lenin? Who is this guy? Who is
This Bukharin.
Karl Trotsky? Who is this guy? This guy
sounds like a bit of a pup.
It's like a Drake and Kendrick Lamar of communism. The feud between them, you know, it's like.
I mean, that's the Spartacists.
Yeah.
Yeah. A minor and all that. Yeah.
Oh, I've learned about the German Revolution. 1918 one. Tragic.
Well, this doesn't seem to be working when I try and scroll it. How am I supposed to read this if go downstairs? I want to. Dad says he's not gonna help me. What? He's rude. He said he wasn't gonna help me.
Virginia, could you mute your, or Virginia, would you mind muting your microphone?
So the one we should be on is wage, labor, and capital, right?
No.
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 Value,
Price and profit.
Yeah.
Eh,
Value,
okay,
price, and
because
profit.
what value, price, and okay, I see it. Okay, finally.
Awesome, man. Cool.
Thanks.
Just reading some.
We can keep going on. There's
Go till
6
9.
pages.
Right. We can stop at 10 or 11.
Hmm?
We can stop at 11.
Yeah.
7 to 11.
So I know folks are going over the reading right now. I dropped a bunch of questions in the chat. I'm sorry if this was already answered, but I'm a bit out of the loop because we've just been kind of getting limited communication on this. But yeah, like, do we want to, like, are we gonna have a Q&A at the end of the session after the readings?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you get the list of the 6 topics?
Unfortunately, like, we haven't been very good at getting very much in terms of communication. So if you can share that with me, that'd be great.
Okay, there was an email that had that, but I'll add those in the chat. So
That's
and
awesome. Thank
maybe
you.
we can get that email forwarded to you as well if you haven't got it.
That'd be sweet.
Do you have a function for saving the chat?
Zoom on the host account usually has a whole transcription of all the
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah, so I'll have to go back to Mandan to access that, but we'll do that. Okay. Okay, okay, so yes, I don't recognize that email address, so I'm not quite sure how Muhammad has, has gotten into this.
The way I managed to make it in is because one of our comrades, Peter, was able to get forwarded a Zoom link. Unfortunately,
okay.
we didn't get a
Oh,
Zoom
okay.
link from anybody.
Okay, so we'll
forwarded.
we'll take his email. We'll take your email address, Muhammad, and then we'll add you to the to the chat so that then we'll make sure you get all the backup, all the materials that were already sent out and that will be sent out.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. So did you catch that email?
And then I just sent a text to you.
Okay, great, thanks. All right.
Oh, hi. Yeah, you can come anytime. I'm in a meeting, but fine. So,
Alan, you mute yourself, please.
the door is open, so sure. Yeah, okay.
How are we doing? Are people done reading or are we nearly at the end?
This is until like 10. I'm left.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, none of us is the host because of the technical difficulties with this account. So yeah, nobody can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not your host.
Might be done. Like just copy paste the chat or copy paste the chat for the questions. Yeah, for like you can't get a transcript. Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, Naomi has access to that with command and so much good, but I think a back end that it was after today.
Yeah, we'll thrash that out afterward. We won't keep people twiddling their thumbs during this. So.
Economics stuff.
Yes.
The English. There's the philosophy.
Actually,
It's a revolutionary.
How are
theology.
How is everyone doing on the reading piece?
I'm
Yeah.
finishing to meet them slowly there.
Okay, all right. Can we say maybe kind of like 2-minute warning to finish up?
Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna.
Do 5-minute warning?
For focus, I'm like,
5-minute warning to finish up.
What is an extreme sport? I tell you. I feel like making my homework while a teacher is like collecting them.
yeah.
Might have to get back into that when I go back to Nate.
Oh.
Back to Nate, never back to Nate. Did they charge me tuition and then erase my memory so I lost all my knowledge and had to go back? That would be a good scam.
Yeah,
Eternal sunshine of the spotless.
Yeah. Eternal profit of the spotless mind.
Eternal profit.
Profit from the spotless mind. Yeah, exactly.
Need to worry about that this year.
You don't wanna take it
The
in?
humidity level is high, yeah, so just leave it.
Okay.
Okay, just for a emergency backup, because of these technical difficulties. I just want to know if we've actually got everybody's name and email. Like, so, you know, if we have to send out anything about any changes in the plan between now and the end, then we do that.
Different reads, especially if you learn like economics from school. This is such like a I never thought of this before. But it makes sense, right? It kind of does make sense.
Oh yeah, I guess we probably don't need that, but this is just like a meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, let's just get everybody's name on the one list so that in case of need, we can make sure that we're contacting everyone.
Oh man, that's really one contact thing.
The which one?
Oh, that one contact thing.
This is? Yeah.
I'm like, I give like I couldn't like.
Okay, well, until you come to the end of the reading or of your attention span, whichever comes first, which I think is where we've got to now, right? Okay. Okay. Okay, so. Okay.
He's a Marxist.
Okay.
That's why.
Learning.
He's been at the whole meeting. He wants to learn.
All right, are we ready to go on?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So, okay, before we go further, I'm going to ask all those people who are on Zoom to please mute themselves so that when we get into the discussion, we're not going to have some, superfluous noise coming from the background. And then, of course, you unmute yourself when it's your turn to speak. So, essentially, this is like for the question and answer and general discussion period. Before we get to that, I just want to point out one sentence that I'd forgotten this was in here, but I think it's just says it so much better than I could, right? The daily or weekly value of the laboring power is quite distinct from the daily or weekly exercise of that power. The same as the food that a horse needs and the time it can carry the horseman are quite distinct.
It's such a good analogy.
It just says it all.
It's like
Straight from the horse's mouth.
Okay. So, okay, I guess first we should do another circle around, like if people have any particular questions that they want to raise or remarks at this point, before we go on to like our predefined questions. Is anybody? Okay, let's check if there's any hands up in the Zoom as well. Okay.
And stop the share.
Should I stop the share? Stop the share. Okay, so we'll
Okay, all right, so now we can see that, we can see whether people have put their hands up in the Zoom, so, okay. So any particular questions or comments right now? Ian?
Just a reminder, we can go and check that one that was typed in near the beginning, if you want to answer that one in the chat.
Oh, yeah, it was like a question about like, what do you mean it's like,
Matt-
it's not associated with like a certain group or something, like capitalism?
Matt posted that. Matt, do you want to
Okay.
speak to that since you're first in the queue?
So, Matt, you want to reiterate your remark and your question there?
Yeah, I was basically just wanted to ask about how it was phrased. Hopefully I didn't like type it wrong, but in the things capitalism is not section, it said capitalism is not controlled by one group. Can you clarify what's meant by that? Did you mean that in the sense of like, I thought you meant that in the sense of like I don't know, there's like, conspiracy theorists or whatever want to blame a certain, or fascists, I guess, want to blame a certain like demographic for their problems instead of blaming like the underlying material realities. Is that what you mean? Because
exactly it. Yeah, it's not
okay.
not responsible of any one group. They're just we don't want conspiracy theorists here. Yeah, it's not.
Okay, that's what I thought you
exactly
meant.
what it
I
is.
just wanted to clarify and I want to make sure we weren't skipping the dictatorship of the bourgeois.
No, we'll get there. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, to clarify, it isn't a conspiracy of the capitalist class exactly, because it's right out there in the open, right? That how they collude, how they buy lobby and buy the government, and that government policies operate in their interests and so on. So, so it doesn't have to be a secret conspiracy for the system to just be set up where the politics follows the economic power as well. And that will be more of the focus of some subsequent sessions. We are, in fact, we're kind of deliberately trying to keep the focus relatively narrow. So we're not covering every possible aspect, but we just want to get through a couple of key points about how the economy works. And then we'll branch up from there in the remaining sections of this course. So, okay. So, okay, do we have more? Are there more questions in the chat?
Just some general discourse
Just,
about force structure. And the longitudinal region there. Alan's got his hand up.
Okay, Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that when it comes to producing a commodity, that there can be a difference in, for example, you get different conditions where someone has a capacity to produce something like, for example, I knew a fellow that he had been telling me that his father was mining coal in the Rocky Mountains, and he by chance happened to strike on some magnificent seam of coal, and he got way more than what the average was, which average is one of the words that I don't think was quite thrown in there. Average, the average amount of labor to take something out. Now, another thing, for example, We know that the tar sands that we have in northern Alberta, they are very expensive to extract and get the oil and eventually gasoline out of it. However, there's so much of it. For example, then if you go on to Norway, they work in the North Sea, and for them to extract the oil is a lot different. The cost is a lot better, and they are able to get this with less processing. The amount of processing is quite minimal. These are a couple of factors here. Another thing is if you make a comparison, when I was a little kid, I knew a fellow that he was from England, and he claimed that his grandfather worked in the coal mines in England, and they worked as much as 18 hours a day. That's before they finally formed a union. So of course things changed there. In Cuba, for example, workers were made to work in slave conditions for as much as 17 hours a day. I guess they couldn't quite make them work 18 hours because they couldn't work and get much productivity if they didn't give them a little bit more rest because of the climate. The construction industry, for example, building a house in the conditions that we have in Canada are far different than, say, building a house in the Caribbean or much of South America. Those kinds of things. There's all kinds of factors that come in, and if you're doing something in a cold climate, it varies in average amount of labor as compared to where the climate is more amenable, so to speak. So basically, that's the all the comment that I have on that.
You're muted at the hall there.
Okay. So, anybody here have any questions? Okay, let's go back then to our sort of our prepared set of questions, which are and okay, so I don't know. Okay, maybe we can kind of go around a little bit and ask everybody to say something about one or another of these things, right? So the first question is, what's the difference between use value and exchange value? We only kind of hinted at that at the beginning. Does anybody got it? Yeah.
Use value is the actual usefulness of a thing, like a cup can be drank out of, whereas exchange value is what the cup can be exchanged for. Price is a different thing.
Price is a different thing. Oh yeah.
Yes. Well, the price relates to its exchange value, but it's not necessarily exactly the same.
So would exchange value just speak more to like something's desirability, like how sought after it is?
No, because the thing is that use value comes into play then, for its desirability. Like, what use is it to you? How much do you want it? But its exchange value has more to do with this, what I've been talking about all along, the socially necessary labor time required to produce it. I mean, you might need a toothpick more than you need a Ferrari just right at this moment if you got something stuck in your teeth. But a toothpick is never going to actually have the same monetary, exchange value as a Ferrari. because toothpick just takes a lot less labor to, it's not less socially necessary labor time to produce the toothpick than the Ferrari. So, so basically use value, something has to be of some form of use to somebody for them to want to buy it. There has to be some out there in a commodity, or the whole system breaks down. If nobody's going to buy it, right, then it's destroyed value.
So basically,
But
exchange value is kind of like variable to like the amount of labor put into it.
yeah, exchange value has to do with the money, right? Buying and selling of it. It's if people are willing to buy it and sell it, then if somebody's willing to buy it, then it's, then there's going to be a case to be made for somebody to produce it and sell it. Right? Whether anybody else thinks it's of use or not. Right? So okay. So where does profit come from? We've gone around about this.
Okay, doesn't profit come from, oh wait, you?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
We're trying to be inclusive to our online friends. Oh no, what happened here?
Okay, bear with me. I don't think this is, I shouldn't have put my hand up if I didn't think about it first. I think, okay, thank you. I think, doesn't profit come from like the surplus labor value of, like a worker? So however much it is, like it's not their like labor power, but it's like their labor time or something like that. And so they work for a certain amount of time or whatever, and how much it is that, like, okay, so what it is that they make or something like that. Okay, anyway, so all I know is like what they're getting paid is not the full worth of, like, it's not as much as they should be getting or something like that. So you make isn't it like a thing where you make your, like, the necessary amount for you to live, like within the first hour or 3 hours or something like that of work, and then afterwards it's just the rest of the money that's going towards the, like the employer, the capitalist period. Okay, that's it.
Yes, exactly right.
Okay.
So, I mean, what it really boils down to, like, without getting, without even really thinking about economic categories, people have to work for a living, and once we pass the stage of just living like animals, we do, there's labor involved, even in the most, the least developed hunter-gatherer societies. As soon as you can actually produce more than the bare minimum that's necessary to survive, it's going to become a question, it's going to become contentious what to do with the surplus. And it's going to become a question of struggle about who controls that surplus. So although we'll go back to this in more detail around about session 3, but basically what we need to live, we have to produce out of the raw materials provided by the earth. And the amount of labor that's required overall for the whole society to produce what we need kind of sets the level of productivity of that whole society and the amount of wealth that's available in that whole society. So the level of development of the machinery and so on is really important. It's not irrelevant to this whole economic process. It's just that the level of development of the machinery is not what creates the profit. The profit comes from the surplus labor over and above what the workers actually paid, the equivalent that the workers actually paid. So it's highly relevant that the machinery creates conditions where labor can become so much more productive that, in fact, what's necessary to support the workers can be produced with fewer hours of labor, and that leaves a whole lot more left over to be surplus labor.
I want to address point number 2. Where does profit come from? Of course, it comes from surplus value, but there's an ever increasing load of things on surplus value. For example, the company probably, or retail store, whatever, pays municipal taxes. There are licenses and fees that come from surplus value, bribes of all sorts, including political contributions. And then there's other sort of social overhead, imperative charity. You know, you can't have homeless people hanging around your front door, so you have to do some charity to deal with that. And these things are becoming an increasing factor in our economy, squeezing the rates of profit that the capitalist otherwise would have gotten, because they're all facing the same surplus value thing, pie, and it further exasperates the problem of the falling rate of profit. That's my contribution.
Yeah, but it's very true. And it's actually, he starts it on chapter 11, which we didn't read. It's only the beginning paragraph of it shows up there on the bottom of the page. Like how the pie of the profit is divided up is a separate issue from how much profit there is. Right. So, you know, like if you like the capitalist who had to go to the bank and borrow money to set up a factory, that doesn't change the actual value that's embodied in those commodities compared to the capitalist who just inherited the money and doesn't owe the bank anything. Now, the capitalist who owes the bank money is going to have to find the interest. It's going to come out of the profit. You know, he's going to have less of it to control at the end of the day. But the value of the commodity in itself is not affected by whether you borrowed from the bank.
Or you inherited it.
Or you inherited it. Or you stole it from the bank, or whatever.
Some nice indigenous people. So.
Or yeah. I mean, theft is an important factor in the origins of capitalism. We'll get into that more next week. But
theft.
So, and you know, maybe if you own the building outright, then you know, that does not affect the value of the commodities, even though if you don't own the building, you're going to have to pay rent, and that's another expense over and above, you know, the expenses of the raw materials, the machinery, and the wages, and so on. But it is still the case. It's the socially, overall in the economy, the socially necessary labor time to produce all those commodities determines their value. And whether the individual capitalist is getting a good deal or a bad deal from the bank does not change that.
One thing I kind of wanted to add on, which kind of just relates to that as well, as the useful quote is, normal and average profits are made by selling commodities not above, but at their real values. And I think that kind of builds off of a lot of what you were saying there. The commodities are still the same no matter who owns the building or whatever. It's still being sold at the same... It's still ultimately being sold at the value that it's being produced for. And yeah, like what was it? And yeah, it's because it's a question of like what was I even gonna say? I don't quite remember. I guess I just like that quote.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go on to that next question. What does Marx mean by crystallized social labor? Anybody want to say?
He really likes birthstones.
I could take a stab at it.
Okay.
So crystallized social labor would be what I guess in the case of an employer, what they could expect a worker's profit, like what their surplus labor will create over the span of time. So that would be like they can expect like 6 shillings like a day, like compared to like 3.
You're answering the first question.
Okay.
You're answering the first question, Jeremy.
All right.
Okay, sorry.
No,
okay. The second one. The second one.
That's not it. Anybody else? Now that we've thoroughly intimidated you, okay.
Is crystallized social labor is the labor that is in machines, for example. Like a machine takes X amount of labor to produce, and that labor is crystallized in it. Like it is a part of the production that is constant for the capitalist. It's not something that they can extract surplus from, but it's crystallized.
It's
So like
basically,
a minimum for,
yeah.
okay.
Well, so, well, I didn't want to get into too much, but I mean, there's a whole concept of fixed and variable capital, right? Like variable capital is just that portion that's going to go to pay wages at this stage of production that you're looking at right now. But there's all that labor that had to take place to extract the raw materials, to refine them, to process them, to make them into machines, to transport them to that factory, to bring in, to produce what might be a raw material for this particular factory could be actually the product of some other factory. Like if you're buying yarn to weave into wool, the yarn is already a product from some previous stage. So at every one of those stages, there's a certain amount of labor was required to produce it. At the point that the capitalist is buying it as an input, it's crystallized. It's crystallized labor. That means it's not live labor. It's not generating more surplus values. The surplus value has already been extracted by that previous capitalist who's selling to this capitalist. So all of those, all that value is incorporated. It's part of the socially necessary labor time to produce this commodity ultimately.
Yeah,
but it's being passed on unchanged from having been bought by the capitalist to being incorporated into the commodities that's being produced in this capitalist enterprise. It's only the actual labor that this capitalist is hiring for wages that's generating surplus value for this capitalist. So, like, again, all the value of the machinery is kind of passed on, like in the form of amortization, like basically wear and tear. Like you calculate, if you can produce 1 million items before the machine wears out, then 1/1,000,000th of its value is sort of incorporated into each unit that's produced. Or if you need, this many cubic meters of some material to go into the commodity, its value is just passed on into that commodity. So at each stage, at each stage of capitalist production, there's a capitalist extracting surplus value, but not over and over again for that same labor. That what's already been produced and sold has crystallized labor value, has crystallized value in it. Okay. Sorry, who is it?
Alan.
Okay, Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, the question I have is, for example, Elon Musk owns a lot of stuff that, or a lot of, what would I say? In his business, he owns a lot of things that do create commodities. Now, okay, that's fine. That's crystallized labor then. But what about if he's got some mega chunk of change sitting someplace that is doing nothing? That wouldn't necessarily be crystallized labor. What would you call it? Is that dead labor or what?
Yes. Well, actually, Marx used the phrase dead labor, sometimes more or less meaning crystallized labor. That it's already been accumulated and it's not generating any more value. But if a capitalist just takes a whole bunch of money and just sits on it and doesn't invest it, that's basically the same as if it's set it on fire. It's that value is destroyed. It vanishes. Like if the value is not, if the commodity doesn't get sold, for whatever reason, like a capitalist makes a mistake in judging how many he can sell, that value is wasted. It's destroyed, right? Because he couldn't sell it. This happens over and over when we have the cyclical crises of capitalism, right? But also, if he just sits on it, you know, sleeps on it like a dragon and doesn't invest it, it's not, it ceases to be capital. The value is destroyed. So this is part of, we'll go into this again next week, like the relentless need for ever more investment. Because if you don't invest it, it stops being capital. It loses, it doesn't have value until you can invest it in creating more value. And you just have to keep going, and it just has to keep getting bigger and bigger. Like, you know, it always has to keep growing. You know, this is part of the self-limiting, you know, the self-contradictory nature of capitalism. It just has to keep getting bigger and bigger. So,
Yes.
so it's, yeah.
Because on occasion, there's been capitalists that had a whole pile of money, but they were looking at, well, they were watching for something where it would bring a greater return. So they'd sit on it for a while, waiting for that occasion for the something to happen so that he could invest it and then get a greater return. So he would have been sitting on dead labor, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, chances are though, it's in the bank, and the bank in turn is lending out money. And so even if it doesn't have to be that same capitalist who's using it.
True.
He could be lending it out, you know, and later on call it back in for some other purpose. I mean, so it's the capitalists as a class have to invest all of the capital as a whole for it, so it doesn't go to waste. Any one capitalist is not responsible for investing every dollar that, you know, that runs through his business. It's possible. And okay, so there's this economist, a French economist named James Piketty, I think it is.
Yes.
He wrote a book about, you know, capitalism, like in the 20th century. His basic premise is they're running out of things that they can invest in, which we agree, right? But that basically that the level of inequality which existed up until about 1914 was kind of destroyed, like a world war and a depression and another world war, and incidentally a Bolshevik revolution in between. Like the class of rentiers, that is like the idle rich, were actually destroyed as a class. But they're coming back, as you know, after the Second World War. For a while they put some limits, you know, they'd learned some of the lessons of those wars and depressions, but gradually over time, you know, the sort of unbridled capitalist exploitation is getting to the point where, like, there's more and more where capitalists have more than they can possibly invest, and more and more of them become completely parasitic. They're not even like managers in their own business or managers of their own funds. And the inequality, the growing inequality means that class of you know, the idle rich is actually sort of re-emerged in modern society. So, but they can, you know, they've hired somebody else to do the managing for them. So it's not necessarily idle capital, it's just an idle capitalist.
Pretty much.
But some of it is idle capital. There is that problem too, which we'll talk about more.
Well, I think it's maybe a great jumping off point into this idea of what labor is worth, right?
Yes.
Yeah, which is obviously like I've read the last obligatory, you know, vague, paradoxical, open-ended question at the end to sort of jump off of. But I think like one of the things that I think about this is when we think about what labor is worth, we talk about socially necessary labor time. It really means that like the value of labor is derived by those social relationships, right? Our connection to each other and to the group. Those things dictate that. So it's really important to note that that social relationship is dictated and driven through a social structure, right? And that social structure under capitalism is property, right? So basically, the decisions about what gets done with stuff are made by the people who own those things, right? So I think like just if there's no, so as we like move to think about what labor is worth, I don't know if anyone wants to like as a opinion on this, is about how this institution of property develops out of this system. This is the economics. This economics and all stuff about the social necessary labor time is about creating property that belongs to someone that enables them to make decisions about it. Does that make sense? Did I jump too far ahead, Naomi? I don't know. But
So what is labor worth? Is that the right way to phrase the question, first of all, in terms of what we've been talking about the distinguishing labor power and labor time?
I was gonna say, or we're talking about labor power and labor time. But I guess like my first thought is off the top of my head is that labor power as a commodity is sold for the amount it takes to produce the worker and their offspring / replacements. Slash just their family in general, which I suppose is a start because their labor time is paid for the same, but it produces more. So that's I'm not actually, I guess the question of worth would mean what type of value are we trying to view labor in?
Yeah,
because it produces more labor than it costs. Or produces more value than it costs, I should say.
Well, in some ways, that's a trick question, right? It's like saying, what is $1 worth? Because labor time really is the measure of worth, of economic value, right? It's not the measure of spiritual value or use value or moral value, but it certainly, it is the measure, it is the measure of economic value, right? So to say, like, what is an hour of labor worth? It's worth an hour of labor. That it, I mean, dollar values derive their value from, how much labor they command, right? So, but labor power, right? Again, there's an area of social struggle over what constitutes the bare minimum subsistence value for a worker. But, well, for example, I'll talk about like the difference between the 1950s and today. In the 1950s, this is talked about actually even by bourgeois economists now, that an ordinary worker, like the wages of an ordinary worker would support a family and buy a house. Nowadays, the wages of a worker will not support a family and buy a house. Why? Well, one of the things that happened in the meantime is all those pesky women went out there and got jobs.
I love that.
So, I mean, what does this mean? What does this mean in terms of the value of labor power? No, you don't need, a man doesn't have to earn enough to support himself and his family. The man and the woman together only need to earn enough support themselves and their family.
But the assumption that they'll remain a unit hasn't changed. That's what.
Well, that's right. So this is why this increases the rate of child poverty, because of, the pattern is still, if the marriage ends, more often than not, the children wind up more in the custody of the mother. More often than not, she earns less than half the total family income. Like their economic status worsens under those circumstances. So that's one of the many ways in which, there has to be a struggle over what constitutes the necessary labor time required to produce what's required to support a family. Right. But in fact, like it makes perfect sense according to the laws of capitalist, economics. It doesn't have to be a nasty conspiracy by the capitalists, although it is. I mean, there's there's been generations of struggle for equal pay for work of equal value, and the struggle's not over yet. There's still that discrepancy, that men and women pay unequally for equivalent work, but it is, but it independently of the nastiness of the uh, of the capitalists, the fact that the fact is that it's now the social norm. It requires the labor of two people to support a family. It requires the wages of two, and the wages of one is only has to support half a family.
Ian has a question or has his hand raised.
Okay, Ian?
Yeah, this is, I guess, a mix of comments and maybe questions too. But like, I think thinking of it in terms of like a family replacing itself, or even a person sustaining themselves, I feel like it's more something that's actually averaged across like all of society or all people, because it doesn't necessarily care if a particular person can produce enough. It's, if the system as a whole can replace itself. And I think that kind of ties into, say, having immigrants do labor instead of families, and normal conception of what we might have seen in the past as society reproducing itself and doing labor. And then the second part of that was, I think when it comes to the value, the labor power, and like what labor's worth, I think there's some interesting kind of distinctions between like labor theories of value that were kind of around before Marx that he references from other economists, and then the kind of like Marx definition of it, because that's something that I kind of got stuck on as well. And I don't know, maybe I don't even totally have it figured out, but I think there's some interesting stuff to get into there if there's I don't know, if anyone else can expand on that.
Okay, well, actually, I think we're coming up to, we're past the end of our time. And that is a very useful and valid question. I think that's going to be addressed in Marxism 201, because it's a much more complex, like to talk about the whole history of these theories. So just to clarify, like a preview for next, we're conducting these sessions like 2 a week. Like we're going to repeat this on Friday, because some people couldn't come on Tuesday, right? So everybody's is invited to come either Tuesday or Friday, according to what's your availability. You don't have to stick with one particular day.
Okay.
And so for the next time, we're going to talk about Lenin's book, Imperialism, because it's still probably the best description of what happens to capitalism, through these inevitable processes where competition leads to monopoly and the lack of competition, and the tendency of the rate of profit to fall, and the relentless need for expansion. All of that is kind of covered in in a sort of outline fashion in Lenin's book, and we'll go over that for next week. Okay.
Sorry to be so.
No,
I have to go.
Very glad.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Have a good one.
So we don't want to keep everybody late.
Mhm.
So we should end now, and we'll take it up again next week. So thank you once again. Thank everybody very much for coming.
Okay, good night, comrades.
Good night.
Thomas Pickett, yes.
I like the imperialism by states of capitalism when we did a little reading on that one. It's kind of scary how he kind of predicted what the situation we are in right now, but it's just like, it's not something like a pseudoscience or some voodoo. It's just like the nature of capitalism.
Yeah.
It is what it's really